Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second round of your clinician session this afternoon. We are at a good number. We're at about 15 attendees so far. Looking for, looks like there's 25 that are registered. So I'll give this just 2 more minutes, approximately, give or take a minute, to let everybody roll in. If you would like, actually, I would appreciate it if you would log yourself back in. Just remember, pay attention to this part. Just remember that if you were with us on Tuesday, or if you were with us in this morning's session and you have already reset your password, then you're going to use the password you reset it to. Otherwise, everything else is the same. CredibleBH.com, first initial, last name, password you reset to, MDVOACITRN, with that TRN being very important. Remember that our training domain and our production domain are separate and distinct. If for some reason you missed us in any other session, though, and this is your very, very, very first time logging in to that training domain, then you will use this temporary password and be asked to reset. So while we wait just another minute or so for any stragglers, feel free to get yourself logged back into that domain. All right, everyone, I think we are at about our max capacity for now. If anybody else does roll in, we'll make sure that they get settled. But welcome back again. If you are just getting in, welcome back to your second session here with clinician information, your end user training here for Volunteers of America Chesapeake. My name is Scott. Again, I do have a colleague today in the back. Her name is Mary. So Mary, if you just want to take a second to say hi, let them hear your voice.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for letting me spend the afternoon with you.
Mary is going to be a great resource for us today. If you guys have any questions, she'll be able to quickly respond to you in that questions box. If you remember from yesterday, if you open that GoToWebinar control panel, below there is the questions box. And if you have any questions, you might get a quicker response from her, just because sometimes we have to wait for good pausing points to answer questions out loud. She might be able to help you quicker. That way, if she needs to say something out loud, we'll definitely have her do that at any point. But just know that she's there and ready to help you guys with any questions or concerns that you do have. Let's go ahead and test that questions box out, though, just to make sure that you're good. I'm going to use it as an all clear to make sure that you guys are good and logged in. So go ahead and put something in that questions box. Let us know in that questions box that you are logged in to your training domain and ready to go. So however you want to word that in there, just let us know you're logged in, you're ready, you're excited. Maybe you're logged in and you're tired, you're logged in and something.
Looks like we're getting lots of folks logged in and saying they're ready to go.
Patrice Crooks. Let me move you over, Patrice, to an organizer again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Getting there, beautiful. Thank you guys for that. And just to make sure I made the right note, we got to family yesterday, right? So we were in the client tab and we got to add a family member. Is that correct? I've had a couple sessions and I just want to make sure I made the right note. Okay. So you did actually add family. Okay, wonderful. So just a quick, brief review, just to jog your memory. We have our tabs across the top. Home tab has a lot of overview information. That's where your employee messaging is housed. You can add to-do items from your employee messaging. Quickest way to get to your employee profile is by clicking your name in the upper right-hand corner. What we did there was turn on our employee messaging through config. We added our signature so that it's saved and pulls into all of our documentation from here on out. You could also review your assignments in there as well. The last important thing was the work hours in that section, adding those so that we can use first available and so that other people scheduling for you can just see your work hours. We then added a whole new client. Some of us didn't have that functionality, but a lot of us did. So we added a new client into the system with our add client button. And you should hopefully see some of those recent clients now in your recent client list here. We were working with Michelle or Jeremy, one of the two. Let me see. Doesn't really matter. I'm gonna keep working with Chris though. I was working that with Chris in the last session. So go ahead and click into any of those clients. And then just continuing that quick overview, client information, demographic information, you can edit in the upper right-hand corner, lots of widgets in the middle for things. And you'll see some of this from other sessions that got beefed up in mine. So we added some meds through some other sessions. We added some diagnoses, so you can see some of that if you wanted to take a look at my screen based on some other things that were added from previous sessions. You can see this kind of integrated primary care workup that's in here. We completed that, the E&M new patient, so he could be ready for a discharge there. And that family contact is where we added family members previously. So all that, just a quick glance at what we did last time, just to jog your memories. What we're going to go into next is actually adding a contact. So go ahead and find yourself in your client record. And right above that family link is the contacts link. You shouldn't have anything in there just yet. Just in case you're joining us now, joining us for the first time, or not for the first time, but maybe coming into the session a little late. I'm going to leave everybody muted right now. So if you did need to ask a question, go ahead and put it in the questions box. My colleague Mary's there, or raise your hand and we might be able to get you unmuted. But with our contacts, in the upper right hand corner, pretty straightforward, we're going to click that add contact button. And what's the difference here between contacts and family? I'm going to open family in the new tab. Remember, family has all of this information at the bottom, all these reporting tools. like dependent, lives at home, primary caregiver, guarantor. Family also has that add link to existing client. When we go to contacts, a lot of that information, a lot of those reporting tools are not there. So that's what is really separates contacts from family. Your contact types are configured up here in this dropdown, so you can select what that is. Maybe there's a parole or probation officer. And then you can add that contact's name. So I'm just going to name this person Officer Thompson. Of course, then you can add a phone number in there. Just a note about these phone fields. This first phone field is where you'll want to put that primary contact number for that contact. Even if it's a mobile phone or a cell phone, we always suggest to put that in this first field because this is the one that's going to show up when you're looking at the contact at a glance. So it's good to have that there so it saves you a step later. You can put a relationship type if there is one configured in here that makes sense if needed. And remember, you have the ROI obtained checkbox. If you did do that, if you remember from yesterday, you can always access the service list. I can open that service list in a new tab, and I can search for all of those ROIs and double check to make sure it is on file and what I need in terms of expiration dates or maybe notes based on that. So I'll just put this out as a year, oops, 20, ooh, I don't know what is happening there. Put that out a year, and I'll save that contact. So feel free to enter any other information that you'd like as you're clicking along with me, and then save that contact here. I did see that we had a hand up. So was there, do we have a question or concern or anything that we can address?
Lynn Thompson has her hand up.
Lynn, I just gave you the ability to unmute your audio if you want to go ahead, or if it might have been raised on accident.
It was raised on accident. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
No need. We always like to consider those high fives for the day. So we'll take it.
Okay,
And,
thanks.
and it looks like something came in that we do have somebody on that missed yesterday's session working with the clients. So they're just they're a little lost in doing catch up. So just let us know if there's anything else we can do to help you get up to speed and caught up.
Catherine, I just want to make sure that you're logged in. Were you able to log in? Because I won't be able to go through everything again, but I can at least make sure that you're logged in and you can move with us from here forward.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like she's working on that now. So Catherine, just let us know if you need any assistance with getting in, and I can help on the back end. And perfect. Looks like Scott's bringing up the information.
Yeah, let's see this one more time. Did anybody have any questions about contacts? I just want to throw that out one more time. If you did, feel free to throw that in the chat while we make sure Catherine is set here. Any luck, Catherine? Johnson. Catherine, I just unmuted you on this end. I don't know if you're able to chat with us real quick. Oh yeah, I hear you. Did you have any luck logging in?
Working on it. I'm multitasking.
Okay.
Mm. All right, let's get this.
Hey, Catherine, if you just check your email, I'm going to send it to you right now so that you'll just have everything that you need to log in.
All right, great. Thank you, Patrice.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Patrice, as well. But Catherine, if there's anything else we can help you with, just let me know. Once you do get logged in, if you can continue to multitask, you'll just want to go to the client tab and filter for a client that's in your program. And then you'll be able to click on their name and you'll be able to kind of follow along with us up to that point. Okay. Back in here though, next step, we added family, we added contacts. What we're going to do next is add an external provider. So if you kind of strayed away with me or from me, come on back here. And what we're going to do is add an external provider. So over on the nav bar, you can see it's abbreviated EXT provider, has a little doctor icon next to it. We're going to go ahead and click on that. That's going to take you to the screen where you have the ability to add an external provider. There's kind of a top half and a bottom half to the screen for some of us, depending on your security rights. I know in some of the other sessions, some of the profile codes only saw the top half, some of them saw the bottom half, so it kind of depends on what your profile code is. And I know we have a mixture in this session. But if you only see the top half, that is okay. If you see both, that's okay too. But I just want to take a second to explain what you're seeing. The top half is where I have the ability to narrow down and select providers that have already been entered into the system. So if I open up that type drop down and I'm looking for maybe let's do psychiatrist this time. That type drop down selection will then narrow down the provider to only the type that you selected. So now I see 2 psychiatrists. You could do that for, looks like we don't have, I think this one is probably still a work in progress, but you could do that for those different types that you have. I'm gonna go back though to psychiatrist because I know there's some in there. And then once you select the provider that's appropriate, I'm gonna go with Samuel Allen. It's as simple as clicking add from list, and that will add that provider to the list. If I needed to look at the details of that provider, I could click the detail button and that will pull up address information, anything that's been entered in terms of kind of address, phone number, email. If I wanted to put in these, you can see we have some blank spaces once it's been added. So like a start date, if we want to note whether or not they have an ROI on file, I could click the edit button and that will allow me to edit and input, excuse me, a start date for when they have maybe, or when they started seeing this. external care provider. If they have that ROI, we could check that and have their start and end dates on there. You could also make notes for that provider as well. Once you click that update button, the edit button turns into an update button for you then to save anything that you entered. You'll notice you have some, those dates pull in. If you made a note, you can hover to discover over top of the I for those weekly visits, or to see that we typed in weekly visits. Whatever note that you input there will show up in your little pop-up. So a note about the bottom half of this, if you do see this, we just want to be very careful about it. And Patrice and I have already talked about this. And there are some decisions that are going to be made. So the bottom half of this is where you actually add in a brand new provider into the list. And it adds it globally then for everybody to be able to choose from. So that's why we want to be careful about it, because if you have access to the bottom half, you have access to add an external care provider to this list for everybody in the system. So we want to make sure that we don't have duplicates. We want to make sure that we're using the same naming conventions and that it's a clean data. So just stay tuned as to how and when you'll use the bottom half of this screen. Your project team will talk a little bit more about that. So if you're not seeing a provider at the top half, you will get more information here from your project team as to how and when that will be entered with the bottom half of the screen here. Any questions, or what questions do you have about external care providers? All right. Hey, Patrice, I was just checking in on that questions box. Mary, just FYI. So
Yes.
Patrice, Leslie Carter. Leslie Carter is one of your,
Uh-huh.
right? Okay.
She can't get in.
Just making sure. No, Mary, I think we got her into the domain, right? But
Yes, I just got her in. So Leslie, if you can hear me okay, I'm going to be giving you access in just a second. I was just confirming that you are, because there's another session, something different going on. So when you sent that message, so hold tight. I'll let you know when I got you all set.
okay. Leslie, though, this is the second half of this session. So we did the first half on Monday. So this is the second half. So if you weren't able to make the first session on Monday, that might be where some of your confusion's coming from. I'm glad you're here though, and Mary's going to get you set up, and we'll be able to get you moving forward from here. Okay, I think we're good though with our external care providers, it seems. So let's go ahead and add two more things. We're going to add two more things from the nav bar here. One of them being a warning, and that is once again on the nav bar. There's a little exclamation icon with a triangle background. So I'll click into my warnings. I already had one. I already had one for my client here from the previous session for Chris. But these warnings are really for anything that you think would be important for other employees to know prior to interacting with a client. So the example that I used here previously was that Chris is prone to violent outbursts. I always like to ask you guys if there's anything that you would find pertinent, anything else that you would want to know. If you wanted to put something in the questions box or raise your hand and let us know. Anything else that you would maybe put into that warning that would be pertinent for other employees to know. Okay. Well, let me give you an example here. I'm going to say that maybe we're visiting Chris in the community or maybe at home, and they have an aggressive dog. Maybe there's weapons at home. Maybe there's a certain place that you're supposed to park when you go home, or maybe there's some kind of domestic abuse situation at home that we need to be aware of and be careful of before we go into the home. So lots of ways you could use this. Like I said, I always like to look for and ask for examples, but hopefully you found some ideas in the ones that I just threw out there. So that's what you actually type in the text box here. To go back to the left side of the screen, the start date populates as today. Best practice is to not put an end date in here yet, because we don't know when this warning may no longer be relevant. So you would only want to end date a warning once the warning is no longer applicable for this client. And then you have low, medium, high, and urgent level warnings. Depending on how you guys decide to categorize certain warnings, will kind of dictate as an agency what you choose here. We just always suggest to be very, very picky about how often and when you use the urgent level warning, because of course, if something is urgent, we truly want it to pop out. We truly want it to have a strong meaning when you see that bright red color and that urgent warning. The is roommate is only applicable for Credible's inpatient module. So I know you guys do have some residential situations, but you don't have Credible's inpatient module. So that would be the only time you'd have to check this. It only interacts with the inpatient module. So once you're ready then, and your warning is the way that it needs to be, you can go ahead and click add warning. What you'll notice is if you have multiple warnings, and you can see it on my screen if you wanted to take a look at it, if you have multiple warnings, the highest level warning will be at the top, and it will be listed, or they will always then be listed kind of in level of urgency. So the highest level of urgency at the top to the lowest level of urgency at the very bottom. If I needed to edit, I could click in and edit that. And if you remember from yesterday, yesterday, not everybody will have the delete button, and that's okay. It's based on profile codes. So do we have any lingering questions about warnings?
Just one that came in, we've been answering them in the question box, but I think it's good for everybody to kind of maybe be aware of, is that warning will appear in the client's profile page once it's been established.
Perfect.
So, just to,
yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you to whoever asked that question, because you're a step ahead of me, and that's wonderful, because that is important information to know. When you go back to the client's overview, you'll see it then in the widget that's in the middle. You'll see it as a little warning icon in the upper right-hand corner. I do know that it is slightly small, but it is brightly colored, and it is colored in the highest level warning. So the highest level warning I have for Chris is a high, which is orange. If it was an urgent level warning, it would be red. But I could click on that to just quickly see all of those warnings. The other place that we'll see it in just a few minutes is in the scheduler. So as you schedule or as you are about to begin a service, you could check warnings in that scheduler window as well. Great questions. Last thing through the client's nav bar that we're going to take a look at and that is attachments. It's a pretty quick and easy one, but on the nav bar there's a little paperclip icon. It says attachments. And when you get into that link, in the upper right hand corner is an attach new button. Your agency has configured some predefined folders and predefined descriptions. So folders are exactly like you would think about like documents on your computer. You create a folder for a bunch of files that would then go into that folder. So you have a lot of different folder options here: bills, discharge paperwork, correspondence, identification documents, intake paperwork. I know in the session yesterday, Patrice made a note to maybe have a specific insurance folder so that all insurance related information documents can go into there. So that stay tuned for that. That might be popping up here as well. And that's typically what I upload is an insurance card. So what I'm going to do is choose a folder that the other option we were toying around with was intake. So really this is just for demo though. So choose a folder that you like, and then you have just a couple predefined descriptions here. So if your predefined description is there, definitely choose that. You have the ability still to free text, but if there's descriptions or folders of things that you typically upload or would think you would upload, I'm gonna say that Patrice would probably like to know that, so that way you guys can get that configured so it saves you time. Once you choose your folder and description though, you can browse for the file that you're about to upload. Just like you would attach anything to an email, you'll find the document you're looking for. I have my fake insurance card. And then click upload file, and it will upload it into that folder that you chose, and it will have the description that you either pulled from the dropdown or free texted. And then that document will actually be hyperlinked, and when you click on it, it's going to open in whichever application is appropriate for that type of document. Any questions about attachments?
I am not seeing anything come in the question box, and I am not seeing any hand raises at this time.
Okay. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Okay. For now, that is the bulk of client information, or at least information that we're going to add through the client's nav bar. Big note about this, so just kind of tune in for a second. We are still going to add a diagnosis. We're going to add allergies. We're going to capture a med, and we're going to update the medical profile. We can do all of those through what's called the client intake link. So I want to demo it for you that way, but just know that you can add all of those through the nav bar as well. So if you wanted to add a diagnosis, it's here, allergies are here, meds, and medical profile, all here. I want to show you a shortcut to some of those though, through what's called the client intake link. So just stay tuned for that. And that'll happen when we're in actual documentation. What we're about to hop into though is the scheduler. So go ahead and find the schedule tab at the very top of your screen. When you get there, what I'm actually going to have you do is take a look at my shared screen for a second. So I want you to be sitting on the schedule so that you're ready to go. But there's a few things that I'd like to point out that I have on mine just for demo purposes. So if you want to find that GoToWebinar shared screen, let me point out a few things for you. When you click on the schedule tab, it's going to bring you to your schedule, to the person who is logged in. You can always know whose schedule you're on by looking in the upper left-hand corner, because you can access other employees' schedules through the employee tab. You can access a client's schedule through the client tab. So you can always check to see whose schedule you're on by looking in the upper left-hand corner. But the schedule tab itself will always bring you to yours, the person who's logged in. With the little arrows right next to your name, you can go forward in time. You could go backward in time. Next to that is a zoom button. If you wanted to see a more granular view, you could go all the way down to 5-minute intervals if you'd like. Just requires a lot of scrolling. If you did like it in that view, that's totally fine. It is nice because it gives you a little more information. When you zoom in, you can see the service, you can see the times, but it does default you to an hour when you go back. Next to your little magnifying glass, you have some different view types. And as always, with pretty much anything in the system, if you hover to discover, you'll get a little pop-up telling you what that little icon is. But the one dot is the day view. So if you wanted to take a look at your day view, you could. Some of you might want to use that view. Day view, the day view button then turns back into a week view, the one with I assume it's 7 dots. I've never actually counted though. That takes you back to your week. Clicking the schedule tab will also always default you back to the week view. You also have a month view in case you're scheduling out kind of far. And this is also, just to make a note, where you can add a schedule template to your schedule, which we'll do in a minute. Just want to continue with this overview though. I'll go back to the week view. There is a team view. I'm not going to click into that. You guys might not use it as much. Front desk will probably use that more, but the team view allows you to actually view everybody else's schedule for the team that you're on, or you can toggle between the different teams if you're on multiple. There's next to that a printer view if anybody really likes to have paper versions of their schedule. And then we're not going to cover all these. There's just a handful that, two actually, that we use the most. And that is this block time. So the white piece of paper with the purple X, it does exactly that. It blocks off time and prohibits things from being scheduled during that time. We're going to add that in just a minute. And the other important one here that gets used frequently is the hide cancellations. So the white box with the red X through it, If you click that, it will hide anything in a cancellation or a no-show status. Continuing with the overview, you probably already noticed that the days of the week are across the top. The times are across the left-hand side. And then there is a big gray grid in the middle. Clicking on that gray grid on the day and across from the time that you're trying to schedule for is what actually opens up your scheduler window. And we're going to do a bunch of that in just a minute, but just so you know, that's how you actually get in there. You can click anywhere in the gray grid. But if you take a look on my Sunday, if you're still looking at my shared screen, on my Sunday, I have some color coding here that I just like to make people aware of. When you schedule an appointment or an appointment is scheduled for you and it's just sitting in a scheduled status, it's going to be in this blue hyperlink. If you hover over it, it'll tell you the client's name, it'll tell you the service type. Sometimes front desk might mark your appointment as arrived. That's what the green highlight means. That green highlight says, hey, we've done our intake paperwork, we've checked them in, whatever we needed to do, they're ready for you. Come on and get them. So green means arrived. Below that, this little X is a form of cancellation or a no-show. You can hover to discover over top of the X to tell you which type of cancellation or no-show it is. Canceled, canceled greater than 24 hours, a no-show, canceled by provider, etc. This orange highlight is one that you really want to stick in your head. It is something that you don't want to see. It means that this is an incomplete service. It means I went into an appointment that was scheduled, I clicked on it, I clicked begin service, but I didn't actually sign and submit and fully finish the documentation. So this orange coloring, you want to have 0 of at the end of the day. You might have it, you might not finish documentation at the time and you can go out and come back in and finish it later, but at the end of the day, or the end of the timely filing time frame, you want to make sure you don't see any orange on your schedule. You want it either to be signed and submitted so that it can go out for approval and billing, or you want to discard that out. And we'll go through both of those processes here in just a minute. Excuse me. The last color coding here is this black link, and that's a completed service. So if I click on this, I'll just open it in a new tab. That takes me to the completed documentation. That's our overview. I do see a hand, so I want to take the time to check on you and see if anybody else has any questions about the overview. Patrice Matthews, it looks like you're not connected to a microphone or anything. So you will have to enter a question in the questions box. So Patrice, if you're looking at my shared screen, just as a reminder, you should see this little questions tab. I have a whole lot more than you do, but you should see this little questions tab where then it should say enter a question for staff. And you can enter that question in there. Yeah. Because unfortunately, it does not look like you're attached to a microphone, so I can't have you unmute.
I'm going to send her. It looks like she's not connected to audio at all, so I'll go ahead and send her some assistance with that.
Okay. Looks like, though, we don't have any other questions about that overview. So we'll keep moving along here. What we're going to do first is use this block time. And we're going to spend a lot of time in this schedule. First thing, though, is looking at block time. That's, again, on your schedule tab. White piece of paper with the purple X. And what that's going to do is pull up, when you click on it, is pull up a little extra window here where you can set up some kind of block time. So as an agency, you'll of course get a little more direction as to what would be an appropriate block time. Typically, it's blocking off things maybe when you're on PTO or when you have a weekly meeting, maybe you have a staff meeting. I've seen it used for that, or if you have specific travel time and you know you can't have anything scheduled during that travel time, you could block off your schedule for those time periods so nothing can be scheduled. So whatever that use is for you guys varies, but that's what you'll type in the note. So where it says notes, I'm gonna just use the weekly staff meeting. That's usually my go-to. You can put whatever you'd like in there, but you will want to enter something here, or when it goes on to the schedule, it just says block. So this is what's going to allow other people to know why that time is blocked off. If you were just putting this on a single day, I could select my day. I'm going to put it out there for Friday. You could select the time that it starts. And then you have to set the duration. I'm going to set it for 2 hours. So you set your day, your time, your duration. If this is just a one-off time, you could click add. And that would just add it right there. I'm going to set this up as a recurrence though, because it is a weekly staff meeting the way I titled it. If you want to walk through that with me, feel free. Click the recurrence button. And that brings you to this setup. You can also have recurring appointments, client appointments, and setting up a recurrence for a client appointment looks exactly like this. You select your recurrence pattern, whether it's days, weeks, months, or years. Does it recur every 1 week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, whatever that is? And I initially set mine to Friday, so I'll keep it just on those Fridays, but you could add extra days if you'd like. The start date pulls in from what we entered on that previous pop-up screen. And then we do have to put an end by or end after. Otherwise, it just goes on forever and ever and ever and ever to infinity on the schedule. So we do want to put it out. You can put it out fairly far. I think it can go up to like 100 occurrences or out pretty far, up to a year or so. I'm just going to set it out for 2 weeks though. So I used my calendar. I have to click that radio button to say I want the end by, and I put it out 2 weeks there. Feel free to use either one of those if you're clicking along with me. And then once you have that recurrence set up in the way that you'd like it, click the save button, and that's going to throw it onto your schedule in that bluish gray kind of coloring. What you entered into that note now pops up as a little link here. You could click back into that and adjust it and update it if you need to. And then if you try to click in there, like I'm clicking into that gray space, I can't do anything. I won't be able to schedule anything in that block. What questions do you have about block time?
Not seeing anything come in the question box, and doing a quick scan to see if there's any hand raises, and I'm not seeing any at this time.
All right. So I briefly want to talk about schedule templates. Oh, I did see the question mark pop up there, Mary. Right, but is it a lingering question? I just want to check.
It's just a thank you to a question that I answered in regards to notification alert.
Okay, just wanted to make sure wasn't anything lingering, so thanks.
You're very welcome.
A note about schedule templates here. They are a little bit under construction. Patrice and I were having a conversation about that in one of the other sessions. So I put kind of a demo fake one in there for now. Just stay tuned for more information about what you guys will do as an agency, specifically with these schedule templates. But so you know how they work and what they are, how you can add them to your schedule. We're going to walk through that for when that does happen for you guys. When you're on your schedule tab, like I mentioned before, you'll go to the month view. On the month view, there's this little rainbow gradient over here on the very right-hand side, a little icon. That's the edit mode for schedule templates. And if you're looking at my screen, you can see that bright pink square. That's one that I already added just to test it out the other day. But let's say I'm adding a schedule template to Thursdays. So I'm going to click on the 23rd, which is a Thursday. And now that, kind of like when we added block time, gives us a little pop-up. And this is where you can select your template. And I waited for this point to really describe what it is because it's easier to see it. This template that I created is for initial assessments. So again, this is going to be specific after you have some more internal conversations. But the example that I chose was, I want to set aside time for initial assessments. So on the back end, I configured a template from, I think, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Yeah, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. with this particular color, this like pink highlight, and I attached it to the initial assessment. And now when I put this on my schedule, it's going to show that I'm available for whatever that service type is. I could set this up as a recurrence as well, just like I did with my block time. But just for time's sake, I'm going to only add it once here. When I click add, from this month view, it's going to highlight the whole day. But I can close out of the month view. And I can go back to the week view. And now you can see on my schedule that I have this nice pink coloring. Unfortunately, you can't change the color of the wording. So you have to be careful about which colors you use in the background. But this is now setting aside time, or showing that I'm setting aside time for assessments, initial assessments, whatever the service type is that we chose. It doesn't prohibit anybody from scheduling something outside of an assessment. Block time is what prohibits scheduling. This just is a visual for somebody who's scheduling for you, and it also works with that functionality called first available. They can search for those schedule templates through first available as well. So stay tuned for a little more agency specific information regarding that, but in terms of functionality, at least you know now how to add those to your schedule. I was just about to ask, are there any questions? And I saw that question mark pop up. Anything we can answer here, Mary?
It just looks like, can you just go ahead and show where to start that again? So what icon they should select?
Absolutely, yeah. It is a little, it's a little weird workflow there compared to some of the other things. So definitely start on your schedule tab. Or if you happen to be adding it for somebody else, you'd be on their employee schedule. But in either circumstance, click the month view icon. This is the one with all the several dots in it. Once you get to month view, you'll click the rainbow gradient here. It says edit mode for schedule template. And then once you're in the edit mode, you'll click on the day that you'd like to add it to, or at least start it on if you're then setting up a recurrence. That's what pops up your little pop-up window here where you could adjust the date if you accidentally clicked on the wrong day. This is where you can select the template, add it as a one-off, or set it up as a recurrence like we did with block time. That's what's going to add that there. Quickest way to really get back out of that is to just click schedule. It's going to take you back to your week view. Let me know if you need that again or any follow-up. Mary, were there any other questions?
No, stated that they got it, and thank you very much for showing that.
Wonderful. You're very welcome. Okay.
Does look like we do have one question that came in. So Valerie, I'm going to go ahead and give you the ability to unmute because it seems like you may want to go ahead and ask that. It looks like you're unmuted. Let me do both because it looks like we have two Valeries
Okay.
logged in.
Oh yeah, sorry. I don't know how that. Okay, this is Hannah. So I just tried to put in the assessment, whatever thing for recurring every week. And say like we have that recurring every Wednesday and like someone's going to be out on a certain Wednesday. I tried to delete just one and it deleted all of the events. What do we do if we do a recurring thing like template like that and we want to get rid of just one of them?
So let me do that real quick. I'm just going to put it on Saturday. Initial assessment recurrence every Saturday for a while. Oh, right. Okay. So when I go into here, there's the delete recurrence and then just the delete button. Which one did you select?
Oh, I might have hit delete recurrence. Okay.
Okay, so they are, I just wanted to double check because the delete is going to should just delete the one and then keep the rest of them in there.
Got it, thank you.
You're very welcome. That's going to happen too with, if I go back to like block time, if I set this up as a recurrence, same thing with recurring appointments. Delete recurrence is going to delete the entire thing, all of them. Delete is going to just delete the single one that I selected. Great question.
Scott, a follow-up did come in, and just if you don't mind just kind of talking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that is the length of time that the template is being designated for that block.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you just go talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. That's all set up on the back end. So that's a little bit of a stay tuned point, because if you guys do begin to use these templates, you'll definitely want to have some robust discussions about them in terms of their timeframes, in terms of how they're titled, what services they're tied to, because that happens. I'll just show you. That happens on the back end here, and typically only your admins are going to be able to actually adjust and edit and enter those timeframes. And then once that scheduled template is added or created, most employees then will only be able to just put it onto their schedule in that predetermined and predefined times. So you can see that's through the admin tab here. And those start and end times are kind of locked in on the back end here. So that's why, I guess that's why I'm saying you definitely want to have robust conversations around those. because once those times are set, they're pretty much set. Let me know if you have any follow-up to that, or if Mary, there's anything else that we can answer.
It does not appear like anything else is coming in, and I'm not seeing any hand raises. So it looks we're good.
All right. Great questions, guys. Thank you. Thank you for those. All right, it is time to actually click into the schedule and start putting some stuff on here for us. I know that a lot of you have appointments scheduled for you in advance. To do that in a training, though, is I would have to go into every single person and put an appointment on. That would be very, very time consuming for 25 people in the amount of time that we have. So I apologize that I can't do that, but what we can do, and at least learn how to do, is put appointments on our schedule and see what that process looks like, because there might be times where you schedule for yourself, or you might just need to begin an appointment right away and have it go through the schedule. So we're going to do that. In order to, if you remember from earlier, from the overview, you're going to find the day that we're looking at, which is today. You could go back to a previous day if you wanted. And you're going to go across from the time that you want to schedule for. So I'm looking at this 8 a.m. time, and I'm going to click in that gray grid on Wednesday around 8 a.m. That's going to pull up my scheduler window. So if you're walking through this with me and actually clicking through this with me, just know I'm scheduling in the past on purpose, because I could feasibly start an appointment before, or that's in the future, but I'm not going to be able to sign and submit an appointment that's in the future. And we're going to try to be signing and submitting all of this documentation. So that's why we're putting things into the past right now for demo, just so you're aware. Can you give me a hand raise though, to let me know that you're looking at the scheduler window? So you clicked on the gray grid and you're looking at this add to schedule window. Put your hand up and go to webinar, let me know that.
Starting to see them coming in fast and furious. And we got a virtual high five in the question box. Thank you, Crystal.
Is that what that is?
That's what it's looking like to me.
Awesome. I love it. Cool.
Creativity at its best.
Perfect. Thank you guys for letting me know that you're good. When we get to the schedule, we're thinking here about our who, our what, our where, and our when. Who being the client, what being the service type, where being the location, when, of course, being the date and the time. Your client can be selected from the drop-down. You have lots of clients, so that is a lot of scrolling. However, I will say that you can type into that. So like I was looking for Chris Rhodes and I typed his last name into there. I also have a Morelli in here. Actually, I took her off of all programs, so I don't anymore. But you could kind of type who you're looking for and it will take you to that point in the list. So kind of a search as you type almost, and you could select from there. Just know that if you didn't want to use that option, there is the ellipses, which is nice because it can help you search. If you have recent clients you've scheduled, they'll pop up here. You can search for different in different ways. I'll say if anybody wasn't here on Monday and you're not sure which client to use, I would definitely click that ellipses and filter for all of the clients in your program that you know that you're on. Like I think somebody was on DC SUD. So if you wanted to do that, you could pull up the DC SUD program, click find, that'll pull up all of your clients in DC SUD. So that way you don't have a mismatch, because remember, you have to have a program relationship. I have to be on the same program as the employee. I have to be on the same program as my client in order to schedule for them. So if you need to do that, go ahead to make sure that you can actually schedule for somebody. If you do use the ellipses, just click that ID number once you find that person, and that will pull them into your client dropdown. What is going to be our service type? This first service that we schedule doesn't really matter, because we're going to use this one to mark as a no-show and complete no-show documentation. So you could really just schedule whatever you'd like, because we're not going to fully go into that documentation anyway. Just again, make sure that you're choosing the program that relates to you and your client. I know he's in this. Location. Some locations actually are defaulted depending on the service type that you choose, but the location is not required to schedule. It is required when you sign and submit documentation later, so it saves you a step in the future. But if you set a location now and it changes, you can change it at the sign and submit screen later. And then your date and your time. So I was actually looking, I was trying to hit the 8 o'clock time. I accidentally somehow got it 7:45. So it's always good to double check that, because you might have thought you clicked at 8 a.m. and got the 8:15 or 7:45. So you can just open up the drop down, choose your time. Durations are typically defaulted per service type, but you can adjust your durations as needed. If you needed to add any notes for this, maybe we need to capture or check up on demographic information. Maybe we need to remember to collect their insurance card. You might just put that note in there as a reminder to keep it. This will only then show up in the scheduler window. Couple other things to point out on the scheduler window before we actually put it on the schedule. I mentioned that you can see warnings here, and that's what this little icon is if you haven't found that yet. So this is the other place in the system where you can check warnings as you schedule, and even again before you start the appointment later. So you can always check on those. And if you had any reason to check on authorization information, that little blue dot is there. No insurance records for this service type, but you could always check that. So if this is something that is being scheduled out in the future, we're going to use this button right now. We're going to click that schedule, and it's going to put it on the schedule based on the time and date that we entered in that window. What you'll notice is that it shows up in that blue hyperlink. If you hover over it, it'll give you the service type that you selected. If you happen to type a note in there, that note will pop up when you hover. What I like to point out here too is that you don't have to click on it, but since we just did it and we're looking at it, that little person icon, if you ever played the game of life, I always think that it looks like those people, those little people that you put in the cars. That's what that little icon looks like. It'll take you to the client's profile. So I'm going to right click on it, but that would take you to your client's profile. If you happen to click on it, that's fine. Just make sure you find your way back to the schedule tab. I did just see the question box light up, which is a great time to pause and just make sure you got that appointment on the schedule. I'm going to phrase it in this way. if you had any issues, let us know. If you don't have any issues, if you did get something on your schedule, just pause for a second, and we'll check in on those people who maybe had some issues. Mary, was that anything in the questions there that we can answer?
It's kind of moving on for a group scheduling. So I was just gonna say we will get to scheduling groups in just a few.
Yep, we'll get to that. Yeah. Again, if you did have issues, let us know. I'll pause for another few seconds to let you reach out if you did have any issues. Otherwise, I'm going to assume if you don't reach out, that you are good, that you scheduled. Okay, good. Seems like we're good then. What we're going to do with this one, like I mentioned, is use this to mark as a no-show, so we can go through the no-show documentation.
Scott, sorry, I did see, Kevin, I see your hand raised, and I just gave you the ability to unmute because maybe, or were you giving us the virtual high five to let us know you're good? Okay, looks like it was lowered, so, okay. Okay, one back up. Just want to check in and make sure you're good. If you want to go ahead and ask a question, you can go ahead and unmute your mic. Or you can throw it in the question box. Okay, he's saying no questions, must just.
All right, high five. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Let's go ahead, guys, and click into that appointment that we just created. We're going to mark it as a no-show, complete that documentation. When you click in, it pulls up this scheduler. Looks slightly different, less gray, more white than what we saw before. A couple of things to note about this is that I can check my warnings again if I need to before I start the service. I can see who it was scheduled by. What we're doing though is marking this as a no-show, or maybe a cancellation. Maybe you canceled it as the provider, or maybe the employee or the client contacted you directly and canceled. However you want to, whichever status you want to choose is fine, as long as you're choosing one of the no-show canceled options. What that does is then pulls up the little button that says begin cancellation no-show form, and we're going to click on that. That's going to bring you into the documentation to complete for this cancel no-show. This is the first real time we've seen documentation, so just a quick reminder that it is all set up very similarly. It all has this little spiral bound in the middle. You'll always see your client's name in the upper left. You'll see the form or forms, services that you are working on in the drop-down. We'll talk more about these other options here when we get into more documentation. There's always going to be a link tree on the left side that mirrors the buttons on the right side. So you feel comfort and know and understand that any documentation that you're going to complete, any service, any form, will always be laid out like this. It's just going to be those categories and the titles of the forms that change. But you fill it out and you address it all in the same way. So let's go ahead and go through this real quick. Click into the cancellation no-show. 2 quick questions for this. They are required. You can see that there are asterisks. If you wanted to experiment with not answering one of the questions to see what happens when you try to complete it, feel free. But I'm going to say Chris didn't get here because family emergency. Purposefully not going to answer action taken. So if you are following or watching, when I click complete, you'll see here that I get this pop-up. And I won't be able to actually complete this until I enter a valid value for whatever it says. So I'll say action taken called. I called to check on the client. I can put in the date last seen if I'd like, just to have that on record. So I'll say that we saw him last week for his appointment. Like everything else, definitely and always click that complete button. And when you do, you get this green little check mark. That tells you that you saved your work. You clicked complete. Whatever you entered into that form up to this point has been saved. There is a counselor portion to this form. In terms of your internal workflows, I'm not sure if you'll use this or will need to, but just so that you know it is there, you have these radio buttons to say yes or no as to whether or not you sent a letter or had a phone call. And there is a checkbox in the counselor's response section here that opens a text box where you can provide extra information regarding this cancel. I entered information into that, so I'm going to go ahead and complete. Now I have 2 green check marks. This bigger complete button, if you could tell, it is a little bit bigger than the other ones. This big complete button, go ahead and click that. It's going to take you to the sign and submit page. What you should notice is that the location pulls in from what you selected when you scheduled the appointment. If there is not a location here, you must select one in order for it to go out to be able to sign and submit it. I have diagnoses on file. I don't know that you guys will yet for your clients, but those diagnoses will show up here. If you ever needed to reorder them, we'll talk more about those in some subsequent documentation here. Recipient should always default for you. I have my billing group defaulted, but you guys will definitely have some more internal discussions, and you'll know which billing group to select if you don't have it defaulted. For now, if you don't have a billing group, just choose any. It's a training domain. Just feel free to choose what makes most sense for you. Service date and time, pull in. The password here is the password that you use to sign into the domain. Since this is the first time we're looking at this, I just want to point out a couple other things. When I'm actually ready to sign and submit, I'll do just that. But if I didn't need this service, the discard service button is important. It lives in here. So if I scheduled the wrong thing, if I don't need it anymore for some reason, I need to click this discard service button, and this is where that lives. Remember from yesterday, we saved our employee signature, so we won't have to capture it every time as long as you saved it through your employee record. That will pull in automatically, but if you did need to capture any other signatures, you have those boxes here. Just a quick overview of that since this is the first time we've really seen it. But when you're ready, go ahead and click the sign and submit button. Because this is a non-billable, it is set to be 0 minutes, and that's okay. That's just what this pop-up is telling us. Just a little system check. You'll also get that pop-up if the duration is obscenely long, like 11 hours or something. I've done that before. If you accidentally put 8 p.m. instead of 8 a.m., the system will check that for you. But you completed that. You'll be redirected to the service tab. And that is your, hopefully quick and easy, cancel no-show form. Any questions about that process?
Not seeing anything come in the question box. Fatmata, I did see you had your hand raised at one point. I sent you a chat, just wanted to make sure you're good. If you're, again, just giving us a virtual high five, or if you have a question, definitely feel free to throw that in the question box, or let me know if you want to be unmuted. But that is,
It's
okay.
Patrice. I'm sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
When we were canceling or no showing the appointments, where would
Mhm.
because I know that, I don't know if she's here, but Catherine Johnson had asked me this question. Where would I go to see a list of all of the groups and the canceled and the groups that were actually conducted, or the appointments for a specific person? And if I didn't get that right, Catherine, correct me, please.
Absolutely, Patrice. We're going to cover that more in depth at the supervisor session, but just so everybody could see it now, for an individual, if you go to your client, whether you click the little person icon or you found them through the client tab, on the client's record in their schedule, there's this little appointment history report. It's a little backwards arrow with the clock in the middle. That's going to give you an appointment history report for a single client. When you go through client tab, schedule, you'll see a list of all of their appointments that have ever happened. You can filter by those different statuses that an appointment can be in. Okay. You can put date ranges on it. You could narrow it down by program, but for a single client, that's probably the quickest way to see their appointments that have been kept or statused in different ways. In terms of, I don't know that everybody will have this, so I'm just going to quickly go over it. The reports tab is where in the service link, if you happen to have it, if you don't have reports tab, just sit tight. Is this appointment history report, where then I can also filter by all of those, but I'm filtering more globally here. I can filter for an entire program. I could filter for an entire team. I could filter for appointments by an employee. So I'm just going to leave it wide open right now. But let's say you wanted to see all of your no-shows, all of your cancellations. So I multi-selected in there, then I can run that report and see all of those that have happened. So just a quick overview, Patrice, just so you know, we will, I mean, that really is the in and out of it. We'll spend a little more time with it though during the supervisor session, but hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Were there any others, Mary?
Just a comment about that being a cool feature.
Oh, love to hear it. I love hearing it. It is.
Mhm.
And very, very useful in many different ways. Okay. We are close to a break. Before we take it though, what I'd like to have you do is put one more appointment on your schedule. When I was talking with your project team, we decided that we were going to show individual therapy, and we'll go through group counsel, I think it's actually called group counseling in here. So we're going to do both of those, but what I'd like you to do first is put that on your schedule before we take a little break here. So click into that gray grid again on Wednesday, somewhere in the past. Open up your scheduler window. Pull in your client. Service type, and here's where it might be different, because I know that we have a lot of different programs here. Most of you though should have an individual therapy session or an individual therapy. If you don't happen to have an individual therapy, please feel free to put anything else on your schedule. Just know that we're going to be doing two different things, and that's just kind of the nature of this training. Sometimes I wish I could do an appointment for every single for every single program. We just unfortunately don't have the time for that. So you are looking for your program in an individual therapy session. If you don't have that, again, schedule whatever else you'd like, and when we get into there, you can just kind of explore on your own. You can pull in your location. Office, that's what I was looking for. And check your date and time, and then you can just go ahead and put that on the schedule. Mary, I stole your job. I looked at the question box. Letitia.
That's okay. I was just getting to it. So it's most likely, Letitia, tied to your access. So let me go in and take a look at that. Or your teams and programs assignment is really more about it. So bear with me. I'm going to go ahead and take a look.
Yeah, I'm looking too, Mary. She's on the MD OMHC program.
Okay.
Letitia, do me a favor, though. When you click into here, when you click into the grid, click on the little ellipses. And do you have a client that you're looking for? If you are, if there is, look for them by last name. If you need to use one of my fake clients, you could schedule for Jeremy Schaefer, Schaffer. He's on a program. I'm fairly certain he's in the program that you're in.
Okay, when I type in that name, he's not coming up for me?
Jeremy Schaefer isn't?
No.
Try, let me do this. Sometimes when I create clients, it's hard for, let me look here. That is weird. Is anybody else having that problem? I have the drop down. There are settings that disable the drop down if there's too many clients. Letitia, let's try though. Harka was in here before. She's on pretty much every program. So type in, when you're scheduling here, test, and you should see Haruka show up, ID 2565. Does she show up for you?
Yes, she does.
Okay. Go ahead and click her and pull her in, and you should be able to schedule in that, such a long acronym, I keep forgetting it, the MD OMHC. That's what you're in, right?
Yes.
Yep. Just verify for me when you can do that.
Okay, so it looks like that worked for me. I was able to schedule.
Yeah, it might be that in your program, or the amount of clients you have access to exceeds the threshold that typically shows up here in the dropdown.
Okay.
But
All right,
let me check, because that's typically like a global setting. But as long as you can actually schedule, you can always use and go through that ellipses to find the client you're looking for. Let me know if you have any other issues though, Letitia. Everybody else, let's go ahead and take a nice break here. If we're okay, I kind of ate into that a little bit, coming back at 3:45. Let's go ahead and do that and take a good minute to step away, and we'll pick up right on that schedule where we left off. All right, see you guys soon. Okay, everyone, I am back. We're in the home stretch. A little bit more here with scheduling and documentation. Just a few things kind of to wrap up with at the end after all that, and then we are good to go. I don't know about you, I stepped outside just for a minute to get some fresh air before it rains all night, and I was not expecting it to be as humid as it was, because it finally was getting less humid, and then like my whole body just got damp the second I stepped outside. Definitely not my favorite part about living in the DMV. I think though, it looks like we should be good to keep moving forward here. So let's go ahead. Actually, Letitia, your hand is still up. I just want to make sure that's from previously and not perfect. Just went down. Okay. Must have been lingering there from before. Perfect. So right before break, guys, I had you put another appointment on your schedule, an individual therapy session, hopefully. Again, if you don't have that individual therapy in your program, then just feel free to explore that service as we go through the individual therapy on our end. But in order to get back into that, remember you click on the link with your client's name, pulls up your scheduler window, and you can click that begin service button. What that does, like before, like with our no-show, it takes us into the actual form, the actual documentation that we have the ability to fill out. As you're looking at this, client's name is in the upper left-hand corner. We have that link tree on the left-hand side, and we have the buttons on the right-hand side. We're going to do a handful of things. We're going to test out some functionality here within the service itself. So let's first actually go through the session information. So go ahead and click into that. And once you get in here, you'll see that there are several questions within this category. Just as a quick overview, you do within any form for any program, you might see radio buttons. Those are the ones where you can choose just one. You might have checkboxes where you could select multiple. Some of our checkboxes open up hidden text boxes. So like with the person's report of progress or strengths, potential barriers, those open up the text boxes for you to enter more information. More radio buttons. If you are scrolling down with me, you'll see that the behavior and substance abuse have those asterisks, meaning that they are required. If you check that no risk assessment checkbox, it actually hides all of those related fields that then would not need to be filled out for that risk assessment. If you don't check it, all those risk assessment fields will stay there for you to fill out. Some of our radio buttons, they are still single. You still can only select one of them, but some of those radio buttons will open up an extra text box as well. So I always like to give a little brief overview of the functionality that you might see within a form, because you'll see that throughout all forms. And just another iteration of the fact that, you know, once you know how to do and complete one form, you'll be able to do anything. Incredible. So what I'm actually going to do is not talk for about 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to let you go through and complete this form, or especially if you're in a program that doesn't have individual therapy, I'm going to give you those 2 to 3 minutes to just explore the form, open the text, the checkboxes, enter information, And I'll catch up with you at 3:52 approximately, and we'll go through some more stuff together here. Thanks, Mary. Okay, hopefully that gave you a good little bit of time to walk through that on your own. Or if you were watching me kind of fill that out, you got to see some examples. I'm by no means a clinician, so I just put in some very fake information in there. But let's all meet back down at the bottom. If you have not yet clicked that complete button, go ahead and click the complete button. And when you click that complete, just like when we saw with our no-show, when you click complete, you do get that green check mark. Just know that the green check mark doesn't mean you completed every single part of that form. It just means that whatever you have entered so far has been saved. Patrice, can I ask you a question real quick? I
Yes,
might have
sir.
asked it, but I kind of forgot the answer.
Mhm.
With the types of notes here, the SERP DARP, is that still under construction, or are all three of those always going to be there for you guys?
It is under construction because I know Dr. Flanagan last time wanted to change the progress notes, and Dr. B also wanted to update the SOAP notes. So we're still in discussions before we decide which one we go with.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that input.
You're welcome.
It's good for everybody as well to know that this is just good practice. Everything I've been saying, once we know how to do one, you'll be able to do it even with that update. But if you want to go into any one of those, the SOAP note I heard in there, these ones are just checkboxes that allow you to enter more detailed information here. So I'm just going to enter some info. What I didn't point out yet is that all of these text boxes that have the ABC check mark, that means it's spell check enabled. The little plus sign will give you more space. You could also drag the corner and resize that text box however you'd like. So at this point, you've kind of seen the functionality. Feel free to really type in if you'd like. But I'm just going to put random words in so that there's information in there. You would, of course, put your clinical documentation in. But I just wanted to show you that very quickly, that those check boxes are there for you. And as you guys begin to finalize those adjustments, you'll be able to come in and see those. But for now, Our SOAP note just has those 4 categories or those 4 questions. So when you're ready, you could click that complete button and save it. So here's where we're gonna pull in some extra functionality. And you have to maybe just think about this in terms of functionality and not in terms of workflow just yet, because depending on your workflow, your program, you might create or input a diagnosis at different times. You might create a treatment plan at a different time. But I want to show you how you can do those things right within a service. So if you did need to input a diagnosis or update any client-related information while you're in a service, you can click the client intake link. So go ahead and do that. And when you do, you'll notice that you're still in the service. You still see all of the categories of your form on the left-hand side, but you'll see what looks like the client's profile on the right-hand side. At the very top, you have a mini nav bar. That mini nav bar, unfortunately, will only ever be icons, so you will have to hover to discover. I promise you will get more familiar with the icons as well after you use it for a little bit. But I did mention that you can enter a diagnosis through here. So what we're going to look for in that mini nav bar is the stethoscope icon. Hovering over it says diagnosis, and then I can enter a diagnosis. If this is the first diagnosis that you have entered, then you will most likely just see a blank text box with the word new next to it. And you can start to type in that field. If for any reason there was already a diagnosis on file for the client you're working with, like you're seeing on my screen, you will have to click the Start New Diagnosis. And when you do that, the new text box opens here. This is a search as you type field. So you can search by, I'm going to do cannabis. Maybe. I can spell. Maybe I'm going to do cannabis dependence. So I can search with text, but I could also search with the ICD-10 codes. So if I wanted to, I could do F12.2. So those of you that are familiar with those codes off the top of your head, you can do that. Once you find that particular code, just go ahead and click on it. Right now, ICD-9s are still configured in here, so you can just, if you get this pop-up, you can just click Save Without ICD-9. And what that does is brings up a box underneath your diagnosis where you can enter more information. So you can enter who it was diagnosed by in that box. To the right of that, you have lots of date fields for when it was diagnosed. I'm going to say today, when the onset was. Let's say this maybe goes back to February. You have the resolve, you have the onset date, a previous onset date. You have this default for programs. So if you wanted to just take a second to look at my screen, my client has multiple diagnoses on file, and he's in multiple programs. So if I needed this new diagnosis, this cannabis dependence diagnosis, to be the primary diagnosis, but only for maybe one program, then I could set that here. I don't know if it would make sense for the DC mat, but it's at the top, so I'm going to select it. But if this diagnosis, for billing reasons, for reporting reasons, always needed to be the primary for DC mat services, then I could select that. Otherwise, the primary problem for all of our other programs is always going to be the major depressive disorder. So if you need to use that, it's not always applicable, but it can be useful. It could save you time later. So just know that you can default it for particular programs. A few other options in there. You have a notes box. You could check it if it's a chronic condition, SNOMED descriptions, rule it out, other onset options in your dropdown. And then what you'll also notice is that there is a dropdown for the ordering of this diagnosis. So I'm adding it as the 5th one, but if I needed it to be up further, I could do that and reorder that diagnosis. But once you have it, once you're good, and you have the information entered, you can click save, and that will save that diagnosis to your problem list. And we did that, again, all through the client intake link, still within this individual therapy service or whichever service you're in. And I never had to leave the service. Saves you time from having to go explore through the client tab, find that, get out of it, come back. It hopefully is a big time saver for you in that regard. Any questions about entering a diagnosis?
I am not seeing anything in the question box, and I'm doing a quick scan of hand raises, and I do not see any of those either.
Awesome, thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Maybe 1 second, I'm just typing a note to myself, guys. If you just give me 1 second. Okay, fantastic. So a couple other things that we can do through the nav bar here. We added a diagnosis. We can add, we're going to add allergies. We're going to add and look at their medical profile, because those are also some things that you at some point might need to capture for a client. So I'll back up on that nav bar. What you'll want to do is hover to discover, unless you know what it is, until you find the allergy button, the allergy icon. It's a little inhaler icon. We can add an allergy here. My client already has one. Yours most likely will not. So you'll probably see a little checkbox actually that says no allergies reported. You could check that if there weren't any for reporting purposes, but we are going to add one. So go ahead and click the Add Allergy button. What that does is brings you to this screen here where you have some fields to fill out. The first one being the allergy text field. This is another search as you type field. So if I wanted to input, let's say, peanuts, I can begin to type peanuts, and all of the peanut related, or up to what I've typed so far, all those options will show up. Maybe it's I am allergic to sulfa drugs, sulfonamide antibiotics, so that one comes to my mind all the time. And you can see all the different options you have here. Very, very important note about this allergy field is that whatever I type here, I'm going to go with the sulfa, because whatever I choose, I'll want to choose from the dropdown, especially if it's a medication allergy, because The system will do a med allergy interaction check, but it can only do that med allergy interaction check if you have chosen the allergy from the dropdown. So go ahead and choose yourself an allergy. You have a field if you needed to add more info, right, related to that allergy. Like mine, I haven't been tested for that since I was like a child. So maybe I would add that additional text there. You have severity options from fatal to mild, also life-threatening. I'm going to choose that this is a mild. Reaction, it's not hives. We did this before. I remember being in a training, there's a more clinical word for hives. All you doctors in the room, what is the name for that? Nobody remembers? Okay. I'm going to say that this is just maybe restlessness then. I'm going to choose that one.
I was looking for hives earlier, and they had two things for itchy skin and itchy something else.
Itchy, okay. I know there is because this definitely came up before. Because somebody asked that question in a previous training, and I did not write that down.
It's
What
not
the
there.
clinical or the SNOMED term for hives is. Mary, would you mind doing like a quick search on that for me? See if you can find.
Hives and reaction in their domain. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like
It looks like it just came in. Urticaria. URTICARIA.
There was no way I was going to remember that. You did UT. There we go.
Thank you, Letitia.
There we go. Thanks, Letitia. Clinical terminology for hives. Okay. Reaction notes. I'm going to just type that in because I'm feeling a little lighthearted this afternoon. But of course, whatever other necessary information you would need, you could input there. The question does come up a lot. If there's multiple reactions to this one allergy, that would be a great place to have this reaction notes. Possibly having the most severe reaction chosen from the SNOMED list, and then the secondary, tertiary reactions down here. The other option is that if they're both severe enough reactions, you could always just add the allergy twice so that it is very, very apparent and very out front there that there are two very serious reactions to this one allergy. This med allergy checkbox is just for reporting purposes. This does not have any effect on the internal system check. It just is there for reporting. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and just click Add Allergy. And that will pull it into your list with all the information that you entered in the previous screen. You do have the Edit button if you did need to edit at any time. And there is the Discontinue here for you because most of us won't see the Delete button. And even if you do have the Delete button, it is better practice to not delete through here so that there's a record still that there was an allergy. Maybe at some point that allergy becomes apparent again. We would easily have record of that and know that it's there. What questions do you have about allergies and entering allergies into the system?
I am not seeing anything come in the question box, and I'm not seeing any hand raises at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Well, guys, let's do one more thing through here. We're going to take a look at the medical profile. And that is actually right next to the allergy icon. So if you need to hover to discover until you find med profile, you can, or just find that inhaler icon again. And one to the right is the medical profile. Go ahead and click on that. And again, I'm using a client from a previous session, so I already have information entered here, so you most likely won't. It should be blank for you, so you can start to just fill this out. If for some reason you're using a client that does already have a med profile entered though, you will want to make sure that you click this Start New Profile button, which I'm about to do. Otherwise, you can just start typing. You can enter the height and weight. I think Chris is a 5'11", he's 179 or something. Okay, so enter your height and your weight. Check-in notes, if you use them. Things that are related to their current kind of medical state. Below those check-in notes, you have vision, hearing, and mobility drop-downs, all with predefined options. Normal without correction, normal with, blind, etc. Same ideas with the hearing. You can go ahead and select the most appropriate option for those. And below your vision, hearing, and mobility, you have general state of health, last hospitalization, last injury. General state here is our drop down with excellent, good, fair, and poor options. Each of these have text boxes for you to expand if needed. Same thing with last hospitalization. I could type in there if I'd like, or I can just use my calendar, my date field. Broken finger. Same as above, broken finger. Okay. Whatever you would need to use those for, they're there for you. And then below all of that are your medical conditions. You can have these medical conditions for the self, for the client themselves, but you can also attach a family member and do some family history medical tracking as well. So feel free to check on any of these boxes. I already had one checked. I had Lyme disease on here. I'll just choose another one. Let's maybe say Chris has low blood pressure. When you check any of those boxes, you'll get a little pop-up with the med condition you chose, and then you can choose a date of onset. And this is nice because it gives you exact years, but then also kind of ranges, teens, 20s, 30s, 70s. I'm going to say that this was in his 30s, and of course another box if you need to add any notes. I can click update then to save this. It pulls in the information I entered. Had I entered any extra notes, it would pull into the right side of those plus signs. And you can see I already entered one of these here. I entered a family member. Birth mother Diane has diabetes, so we're capturing some family history. Just know that if you enter a family member through the client's nav bar, they'll show up here. This is the only way. Entering the client or the family member through the record is the only way then that they'll actually populate into this drop down here. So those two things are connected in terms of functionality. So with this cancer medical condition, I'm going to choose his birth father. Age of onset maybe was in his 50s. Extra notes, you have the ability to select the age of mortality there as well. And you can add that kind of family history here. Feel free to fill out that to your liking. At the very bottom of the screen though, you'll notice that you have the ability to specify cancer, autism, and diabetes types. So I put type 2 in there. You could specify those if needed. Whether you're starting a new profile or this is your very first profile, you will still need to click the save button. And that's what's going to save that profile. Keep in mind that anytime, just like I did when I started, anytime you want to add a new page, you want to add a new record to the medical profile, you will have to click this Start New Profile button. It's like writing on a new page in a journal, or you're technically then overwriting the old profile. Very important step there. If you want to see and access the history, you can do that by clicking the History button, and you can see it has an ID number attached to it. You get an overview, or if you clicked that View button, it would actually pull up all that documentation down below. So that is a nice feature of your medical history. What questions, if any, do you have about the medical profile?
Not seeing anything come in the question box, and I'm not seeing any hand raises at this time.
Okay. Okay then, let's take ourselves back to the progress note then. Remember, we did all of that through diagnosis, allergy, med profile, all through the client intake link. Could also all be completed through the client's nav bar in their record if needed at any time. With our progress note, I just want to take you to the diagnosis button or link, because now if you didn't have anything injecting in here previously, you should, as long as you entered a diagnosis, see all of that injected diagnosis information into the diagnosis category in this form. And actually, you have a nice little notice here that if you did need to add or update, you could use the client intake. We're going to go ahead and start ourselves a treatment plan here. So I can do this through a service. Depending on your workflows, you can also do this and start and update a treatment plan through the client's nav bar. But we're going to demo here through a service. And anytime you see Credible Plan, Treatment Plan, Credible Plan Doc in a service, that's what's providing you access to view or add a new treatment plan. So go ahead and click on that, Credible Plan. We'll click Add New Treatment Plan. And it looks like you have two plan types here. You have DC, you have Maryland. I think we're split pretty half and half in this group. So I am technically closer to DC. So I'm going to choose the DC plan. So Maryland people, feel free to choose your Maryland. They might look slightly different, and that's okay. But again, I'll give overview information and generalize. You just might see some extra different fields in your Maryland plan. When you select your plan, just want to make sure. Yep, when you select your plan, you'll then have a start date, a target date, and an end date. Target date and end date are here for you to use. Our target date is, of course, what it says. It's a soft date. If you choose to use that, you could just use your calendar picker. Our end date is in here. Just know that with your end dates, once that end date hits, that plan will then automatically become inactive. So just be careful with those end dates. Very important step, whether you do it now or whether you check it at the end, there is this active checkbox. It's very, very important that you do that, or it will not actually become an active plan. So make sure that is a step that you ingrain in your brain. And then below, okay, below there, you have, I'm just going to give a quick overview, some elements here. I'm going to call them elements. Those are those big boxes. And this is where the plans might differ a little bit. I see at the top with the DC plan, we have our diagnosis. And then but below the diagnosis element, we have problems, goals, objectives, and interventions. What's nice with our diagnoses is that if you go to those drop downs, you can pull in each one of those as long as the diagnosis has been entered through the client's chart already. There is always this text box up here. I'm not sure, I'm assuming that as you guys walk through in more internal training, you'll discuss this text box. This is unfortunately a hard-coded text box. Same with the problems, goals. There's always going to be 2 text boxes here. So you can discuss how you'll use those text boxes if you need to. With the diagnosis, decide what you'll type there. Note that in these elements, you also have start, target, and end dates for each separate element. So at the top, you have your overarching plan dates, but then each element for the diagnosis and for your goals and objectives, you have separate start, target, and end dates as well. So I entered my diagnoses. I'm going to leave these target and end dates here and open. And then of course with your problem, I'm going to be very generic, enter as you've seen this entire time. There is a limit to like 500 words, I'm fairly certain, to this text box. So if you need to filter down into the second text box, you can. Or I have seen some agencies enter the generalized problem here and then have the client maybe describe it in their own words in the bottom. However you decide to use that, just know those text boxes are there for you. I have my primary problem, but if I needed to add a secondary problem, I could click this add problem and it'll pull that down into the bottom. And I could build a whole secondary tree here. Secondary problem, goal to that secondary problem by clicking the add goal link, add objective. So you can build out a whole second problem tree below. If you don't need those though, you can just click the X's. Know too that as I go down to my goal now, with my goals here, I have a primary goal to my primary problem, but if I needed to add a secondary goal to the primary problem, you could do that. Back up to our primary goal here though. I'm actually gonna just stop talking for a minute here. I'm gonna let you guys explore your specific treatment plan, fill it out to whatever degree you'd like to fill it out to, and we'll meet back down at the bottom with the signatures. So I'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. All right, guys, hopefully that was enough time to explore a little bit. I did say we were going to meet at the signatures, but what I'd actually like to do is meet at maybe the interventions. I think that's a good box to demonstrate this. So I do want to point out the golden thread. So with this golden thread here, when I click that link or that button, you have some options. I don't know that you have any documentation options just yet, but if you open up, or actually you might just want to look at my screen because I don't know that you guys have entered any meds or orders. So it might just be a good time to take a look here on my shared screen. So again, I'm in the intervention, clicked golden thread. And what you'll see here is that you have options for documentation, physician's orders, meds. So if, let's say, one of these medications that I added was actually an appropriate intervention that needed to be documented in this plan, I could just click that add button, and that just pulls in the medication that I have already added to the client's record, or that I did previously. So it saves me time from having to type that entire thing if that's an appropriate intervention. The other things you saw there, I added some orders. We had orders that were added for this client earlier. Those are there for you. That's what the golden thread is useful for if you did need it. At the very bottom, you do have all of your signature boxes. When you capture your signature, when you click that button, as long as you've saved your signature in your record, you can just click that use saved signature and it pulls it right in. All of those credentials are entirely fake, but they will pull in your credentials as well. You could add, and then you could, of course, capture the client signature. They could sign from here. Chris, CHR, I don't know where I went. Okay. You can save that signature. You also have space for supervisor and legal guardian. As you begin to scroll back up, you'll notice that the save button pops up, but you would, in your best interest to go back through, review everything, definitely make sure that your active checkbox is checked. And once you're good, you can click that save button. And that saved that plan for you. So now what I do want to point out here is that at some point you might be in a service and you might just want to view it. You can do that. Credible plan, once it's active and added, when you click it, it'll pop up. You can view it. There's a documentation box here. If you needed to document against or to the plan, there is that documentation box. Of course, if you add any documentation, find your complete button. And then the last thing to really think about here is that I can edit. Some things might be locked down for you guys. Actually, it looks like a lot is locked down, so maybe you don't. Yep. That's all very locked down for you after the signature has been added. What questions though do you have about? Okay, Patrice actually just put good information in there. She said, you guys will be changing the Credible plan to treatment plan, so it's common language and language that you'll recognize. So anywhere you see Credible plan, that will be changed over to treatment plan.
We did just have something that came in, if you don't mind taking a moment just to talk about how does the Credible monitor the 3-month review or 6 months renewal of the treatment plan?
So that's set up in the back end. Therese, have you gone through that with setting up those timeframes?
We briefly talked about a charting timetable, but I will put it on my list to further discuss with Fatmata.
Okay. Mary, I was just thinking about something. Are there notification triggers that fire off those 3?
There are, yes, they're available. If you want me to look and see if they've been turned on here.
If you
It
wouldn't mind.
sounds from what Patrice was saying, but I'll go ahead and take a look. Okay.
So Leslie, there are some notification triggers that can fire on that.
And it does look like they have those turned on.
Okay. So you will get
They
those
have-
notifications. They'll show up here in your notification events. So you'll know that it's time to go review that plan. The other place, just quickly here, before we finish this out, in the client's profile, you can review that plan without having to be in a service. Okay, so I could view, I could edit, I can copy from here. So as you come across that review, if it does need to be copied over into a new plan, I can do that from here. I could copy, I can end date, and then copy that into a new plan with a new start date and activate that new plan. So that's happening through the client's nav bar.
Okay, and then a follow-up, is there an area to complete the psychosocial assessment and the reassessment? Patrice, this might be more for you to assist with answering.
In regards to, can we clarify the question? Who asked?
That would be David. Here, let me
Okay.
see if David, I can give you the ability to go ahead and unmute your audio. It looks like you should be able to now. If you want to go ahead and unmute, maybe, answer your question. You're welcome.
So every time we complete an initial intake assessment, we complete a psychosocial assessment, and then every 6 months, there's a psychosocial reassessment. And I looked at the intake section, and I was wondering where that would be to complete that assessment.
Yeah, so
I don't think those forms,
Oh,
yeah, that is a me question. Valerie provided those forms. We haven't updated them into the system yet. I'm actually just doing that in the partnership domain now. So you should see those forms shortly because I'm going to request that they be added.
But I didn't give you the clinical psychosocial because I was waiting for Amy, Dr. Flanagan, and Simone to confirm that that's what we're going to be using.
Okay, so once all of that is done, you'll be able to see it, and we'll be able to figure out the notification triggers.
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you so much, Patrice, for assisting
You're
with
welcome.
answering that.
Just to wrap that up, those will though, David, and I don't actually know who else was talking, so I apologize. Those will then be in the service type. So they're unrelated to the treatment plan, but then when you are scheduling that or having that or need to have that service, depending on which program you're in, it'll show up in your program and you can select that, that assessment from here, from this list. Yeah, there's an assessment with the med comp here. There's these assessments in the Maryland OMHC, but I don't know if that helps you right now. Just know that they'll exist there. Anything else in there, Mary?
It does not appear to be so. Doing one more quick scan for hand raises, and I'm not seeing any.
Okay. All right, there was a lot of functionality kind of tied to that, or that I'm showing through this one service here. So I appreciate you bearing with me through that. There's one more thing actually I'd like to show you with this service. Things that you might not use every time, but things that will be that can be useful for you as you're using Credible. And that's in this drop down up here, the add forms to visit. So if I'm doing any service in a individual therapy, in my assessment, wherever I'm at, I can go to add forms to visit, and I can pull in these different options. So maybe I do, maybe I need I don't know, assessment with MedComp or a case transfer meeting. Maybe I need to pull in a secondary form with that, and I can click on that, whatever form I want to pull in, click add forms, and now that's going to be in my drop down. So we did most of our individual therapy. Then when I'm ready, I can click on the assessment, and I didn't have to leave. Again, this is under construction here, still the same progress note. But I could access that assessment without having to schedule a whole new appointment, without having to even get out of this initial service that I was in. It's called a dynamic form group because I'm creating a group of forms right within this one service. Can be very helpful and such a time saver when you need to use that. You do still have to sign and submit each one of them separately. So I will click complete on the individual therapy. We saw this screen before, just a reminder, location is required. Make sure you choose a billing group if it's not defaulted for you. Adjust your start and end times to reflect actual times if necessary. Enter the password that you use to sign into the domain, and then you can sign and submit. Typically with a single service, you're redirected to the service tab, but because I pulled in a secondary form, because I tried to create a form group, it's gonna keep me here to remind me, hey, switch over to that other form. Make sure you complete that one too. So if I did that, I could come in, I could complete this form, this assessment, whatever the service is, and either sign and submit it, or what I'm actually gonna do is click that billing info link and discard this because I don't actually need it, and I don't want it to turn into an incomplete service. So if you happen to pull something in and don't need it, very, very important that you go through this step of going to the sign and submit and discarding so you don't have an incomplete service. Anybody have any questions about creating a dynamic form group or really anything up to this point?
Not seeing anything come in.
Okay. Give me just 1 second, guys. I'm going to actually need to do a couple things in the background here. Okay. All right, guys. The last bit of documentation that we're going to look through is group documentation. It might be in your best interest to just watch this, and I'll tell you why. Because when you schedule groups, all groups must share the same program, or all members of the group must share the same program. But sometimes that can be really challenging when we're all in different programs in the same training. It creates a little bit of chaos. So it might be in your best interest to just watch this process and take notes on it so that we don't have any scheduling issues or any kind of grouping issues here. So what you need to know about groups, though, is that I can schedule this group in one of two ways. Predefined schedule groups, of which you have multiple that are established that have been kind of set up on the back end. You can also create an ad hoc group more on the fly. And I'll show you how both of those happen. It starts the same way as an individual appointment. I click on my gray grid, and at the very bottom of your client list, or if you're only seeing groups, you'll see them right away, are all of the predefined schedule groups that you have. So I put a couple of people in the group counseling on the back end, and I'm going to choose that, but I made sure that they were all in the same program. So I'm going to schedule for that. But if you're not sure if you have people in the same program or members in a group, again, I would just watch here. But I'll choose my group counseling. The service type is going to be a group counseling. And location, I'll just pull in so that I can save time later. It's a good time to point out the begin service button. I don't always have to schedule things ahead of time. I could do this right here on the fly and click begin service. What that does is actually takes me into this group progress note. And if you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, now instead of different forms here, I have all of my group members. So I could toggle between the different members of my group. Laid out the same way as our individual documentation. The big piece of functionality here is this share form button. When I check this, and when it is checked, you just get a notification saying that it changes. I'm so used to it, I kind of forgot it popped up there, I apologize. But you will get a little notification. When this is checked, any information that you enter into this form will be shared between all of the members in the group. So it's nice for this group information. So when I have my group summary, got homework, right? I can enter my plan between. When I go to click complete now, Credible Test has the green check mark. Chris has the green check mark, and he has all the same information, and it will all have been shared for all of the group members here. I can do that for client information. Anything I want to share, I'll keep my share form box checked because maybe there's something about the individual information that is the same. So maybe everybody was active in the discussion and I want to share that with everybody. I can do that, click complete. And then when I'm ready to do individualized documentation, I'll uncheck this box. And now I can go back into Credible Test and I can individualize. I'll check a couple other boxes here. Okay, mood during group was stable. Were there any stressors? None or new issues? And I can complete that. And now Credible Test has all that information, but if I go to Chris has the one that we shared, but now I can individualize Chris. His mood was stable. I'll say no new stressors. I can complete my documentation for Chris. You can view that plan within here as long as there's one on file. If you're looking at my screen, you'll notice that that documentation I entered earlier shows up and it's saved here with a timestamp on it. And of course, then I would go through and complete the documentation fully for the rest of my clients. When I'm ready, I can start to submit this documentation. So I'll submit for Haruka. One difference here is that you have this sign and submit all services checkbox. If all of my billing info, if my start and end time, billing group, all is the same, I can check this and it will sign and submit everybody that's left here. But in terms of workflow, you'd want to make sure that you enter and submit individuals first. So let's say Harika actually left early. She left at 11:15, and I want that time to be reflected and documented. I'll submit hers first without checking this. So Harika gets her own service ID. But then if the remaining individuals in our group have all the same start and end times, we can submit all this together by clicking this checkbox. And they'll still get their own separate service IDs, but we just submitted all of them at once. So hopefully saving you a lot of time. So now, how do I create schedule groups? They get created on the back end. So if there is a schedule group that you're not seeing in the dropdown that might be necessary, reach out to your project team. How do I add somebody to a schedule group? I can go to their client record. Let's go to Michelle, because she's not in it. I could go to their client record, and on the nav bar is this schedule group link. So if I thought Michelle would benefit from group counseling group, I can assign her to that group. I can just as easily unassign her if she no longer is a fit for that group. So while the creation of these schedule groups happen on the back end, as long as you have the appropriate rights, you can assign members to that group. Just remembering that they must share the same program in order to have the same, in order to have that service created and documented for them. Now, in terms of an ad hoc group, it starts the same way. I can go back to my schedule, click on it, and this time I'm going to actually check the group activity checkbox. Turns my client dropdown into a multi-select field. I personally steer people away from the multi-select because it can be long. You can accidentally stray click. My preference to train is the ellipses. You can search for your client here. And you can pull that client in. You might not see them populate right away, but you could scroll through and make sure that they pulled into the list here. So you go through, you would add all of the clients that you'd like to add by searching, or if they're recent clients, you can just kind of click here and they'll all pull in. You'll see them highlighted. Still must share the same service type, so the same program. So I can schedule that, as group counseling and schedule this session. From there, it's all the same. Really, the difference for an ad hoc group is just this checkbox and searching and selecting all of the clients you'd like to pull in. So what questions do you have about group services?
Not seeing anything come in. No hand raises. Looks like we're good. Oh, Fatmata, I see your hand raise. I'm not sure if that's you just telling me you're good or if you have a question. Oh, it looks like you're
I'm good. Yeah,
okay.
I'm good.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you. Okay, then it looks like we are good.
Patrice, I think that message came directly to me. Oh, no, that's okay, Patrice. Patrice asked a good question. How do I check? Okay, so I'm interpreting this two ways, Patrice. With my group counseling, if I select here, wow, okay. If I schedule this, when it's on the schedule here, this person icon typically takes us to an individual's record. but I can click on this and that's going to give me the group roster. So that I'm interpreting that question that way first.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then the second way, when the group actually happens, how do we check off which members came versus which members were no-shows?
Correct. Okay, so with no-shows, 2 ways to mark a no-show. And that's ultimately, Patrice, that's going to tie into the report that I showed you earlier. You can run that report on them because once it's completed, you would see it there. Okay, actually, had I marked, sorry, my mind went in like 3 different directions. Had I marked somebody as a no-show on this one, once I complete it and I click that roster again, I'll be able to see them listed here as the status that they were saved as. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you
Thank
wouldn't
you.
actually have to run that full report. That would be the quicker way to go about it. In terms of marking them as a no-show, again, I clicked on that person icon to get to the list here. I could go to their schedule by clicking that schedule button, clicking into that appointment, and then marking them as a no-show here. So that's one way I could do the cancellation no-show form here as well. The other way to go about that, of course, I click save or go to the no-show. The other way is if you noticed when I got to the sign and submit page, there's this no-show button here as well. So it's really a decision that you guys would want to make in terms of a workflow, but you do have options.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions about group?
It does not appear to be so.
Okay. Okay, I have like 3 little bits of information for you here, guys. So I know we're really down to the wire, so bear with me. One of them is documenting a medication. You guys are using orders. So when you're dealing with any kind of meds, even just documenting, not prescribing, we'll want to document that through the orders link. I do know that there's a medications link, but because you're using orders, we'll want to keep that all attached to our orders link here because it's going to create lines within. I kind of asked the reasoning behind this earlier because it's going to create order lines and med lines through here that won't get created when you go through just the medications link. So if I'm trying to document, somebody came to me with a med, I just want it to be on their record, I'll go to orders, more actions, add medication. So again, orders, more actions, add med, brings me to this space here. So if I am maybe capturing, somebody throw out a medication for me. I have a very limited set of examples that I usually go with. Something that somebody might come into the office having been prescribed already.
We got clozapam. Clonopam.
K.
CLONAZPAM.
This one?
Yes.
Clonopam. Okay. Okay. So if this is the medication that somebody brought to you, they're on it, they were prescribed it by somebody else, I'll select that from my dropdown. You'll record all of these actions, and I'm going to say here, I'm going to zip through this, but we have a really great micro learning video on this that you'll be able to go back and reference in our LMS but I do want to do this for you right now too. But I'll go through my action. I'll insert, I'll put my action as take. If this is inappropriate dosage, I apologize, but I'll say 1 tablet by oral route, maybe twice a day, 2 times per day. So instructions here like once in morning and once in evening, take with food. So you can add those instructions, whatever is again based coming to you from that label being presented to you from your client. You can add the rationale. This is reporting only. Is it prescription? Not creating a prescription. It's just noting and reporting that we are creating one. And now if you entered an external provider through the external provider's link, that external provider will show up here and you can attach it to that person if it's coming from that external provider. Not a requirement to add that, but it is there. And just know that your green providers are your internal providers. You'll capture the quantity at the time that you're recording this, how many refills there are at the time. You could capture pharmacy information. And when was this started? So when was this previously prescribed? I'll just take that date back. So you choose your med, fill out all those typical action dosage instructions, and then you can click add. And that's what's going to capture this now to your client's med list. Okay, so that's number 1. The other things I want to show you, are your incomplete visits. We want to make sure that we're always referencing those. Your supervisors might run reports on them, but you as individuals should have a handle on your incomplete services. And those are services, again, that you started, you clicked begin service, but didn't sign and submit. So those are listed in the home tab here, in your schedule in the orange color. In the service tab, if you have them, you'll see an incomplete services button. Why is that important? Why am I making such a big deal about that? Because incomplete services can't be billed. They can't, and they won't then be attached to the client's record. Nothing can be done with this until it's actually signed and submitted. So it's feasibly money left on the table. It's feasibly, just dirtying up your domain by sitting here in an incomplete status. We of course want to keep that domain as neat and tidy as possible. So very important for you to check those daily or at least every other day. Okay. There is one more thing, although I'm not going to see you again. I'm going to give you homework. We were going to go over the discharge plan, but I don't want to carry you over. So your homework is to go in and complete a discharge plan for your program. Good news is that you schedule it and complete it just like we did all of our other forms. And my last little bit here, guys, stick with me for just a minute. Any domain that you're in is your, you will see this question mark. It takes you to the knowledge base. You can search for anything and everything function related in the knowledge base. So maybe, let's say allergy. Maybe I'm looking for allergies. I could find an appropriate allergy knowledge base article. I could save it. I can pin them by clicking this button, print it. I can copy it and send it out. But this is a really, really great resource. I encourage you to explore it when you're stuck, or even if you're not stuck and you just want to learn more about the system. And the other thing here, you can access through the knowledge base. Click the ellipses, find your LMS, This is a separate website, so I always suggest to bookmark lms.credibleinc.com. And then within the LMS, the learning management system, these are web-based trainings. You can enroll in trainings yourself. You can have trainings enrolled for you. One that I will suggest for you to look for is the end user clinical to review. It's in big chunks, but it's a great review if you ever need it. And the other thing that I'll suggest is going to the catalog, because we have this wonderful new micro series. If you go into Credible Partner Training folder, micro learning, we have all of these 2 to 8 minute videos on little bits and pieces of functionality. So if you happen to miss yesterday when we went through employee config or the employee profile or the signature, these would be great little videos for you to watch. Very to the point, very succinct, very helpful. I always want to make sure I go through that. I know we're over time, but the great resources that you should know about and absolutely should access and use. Patrice just asked a question, is there anything they need to prepare for tomorrow? Which session are we talking about, Patrice? The
We have the non-licensed subscribers, and then we have the supervisor training. Like, do they need to create a client to play with, or
for
do they
supervisors? For supervisors, no. Yeah, for supervisors, no. But for anybody that's coming to the non-licensed, I would definitely make sure that you create a fake client if you'd like. So that way you can get that experience and you can just use that fake client. Really, no, nobody ever asked that question. I kind of like that you asked it. I love when people are proactive. So that's why it took me a second to like think about that. But yeah, at the very least, I would say create a client, but otherwise we'll be good. So.
Scott, I have
Okay.
a quick question. This is Valerie.
Hey, Valerie.
So I saw you talk about discharge plan, and I've been in and out of all the meetings. But when you talk about discharge plan, so that would basically be if a clinician is discharging somebody. But remember when I was asked about discharge and disenrolling, you said disenroll is probably DC. If intake, for instance, needed to discharge a client, is that different from doing a discharge plan?
If intake
Can we
needed
just
to,
discharge a client without doing a plan? I guess that's my question.
so I guess that's a question of maybe a more internal question, because if you don't need to do this full discharge plan for a single program, like if they're only being discharged from intake and being moved to like a sub program, that's
or even inactive.
Say that again.
Or even inactive, because sometimes we get clients that we get referrals for, but then they drop off. They never go through the intake process. So then we discharge them because we never hear from them again.
So yeah, I can answer in terms of functionality. You don't have to do a discharge plan in order to actually unassign anybody.
Okay, we understand. Okay.
But as an agency, if you need to have that documented, if that's a part of your workflow, even for that single unassignment, even if they never showed up, if that discharge plan needs to be on record, then of course you would go through that. But if you don't need the discharge plan, it is just as quick as going into their profile, going into their teams and programs, and unassigning them from here.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then Patrice, I have a question for you in reference to NOMS.
I don't have no answers for you, Valerie.
Yeah, because my question is NOMS, that's a big piece of this workflow for us because we have grants and I know Credible said they have NOMS. Is somebody going to show us how to do them? Credible?
Yes, we can talk about that offline. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. It just came to my mind as I was thinking about this discharge stuff.
Got it.
Have a good night.
Tomorrow. Scott, just before we officially wrap up, it has been requested that if you could just show how to get to the knowledge base manuals again.
Sure. Let me just throw this out first, guys. If if you're good, if you don't need any questions answered, feel free to hop off. Just remember that my training survey is attached or linked in your training domain. Please take the 2 to 3 minutes to fill that out when you have the time. But if you're good to go and don't need to follow up with anything, please feel free. We held you over a little bit. Please feel free to log off. But absolutely, I'm here. I don't have anywhere to be. We could stay here till midnight if you wanted. Just kidding. Even as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, not midnight. Maybe 5:15. Anyway, when you're in any domain, training, production, partnership, whatever it is, there's a little question mark up here. And that's what's going to take you to the knowledge base. The question mark always takes you to knowledge base. So this is where you could come in and explore. Within the knowledge base, then, that's where you can access the LMS. Through this little ellipses, that takes you to the LMS. And again, I always suggest, because it is a separate web address, I just suggest you bookmarking it. So that way you don't always have to go through the knowledge base to get to the LMS. But that's totally up to you.
I have a question. Do you have to create an account for LMS also? A username and password?
Yes, you will need to get login information. That should come from your project team. So Patrice, I don't know if you have been able to do that for everybody yet.
Most people have, 54 people have. So if you are not one of the 54, send me an email and I will add you to the LMS.
Okay, my question was I know I got the one for Credible, but it was for LMS. You're going to use the same user and password for the Credible for the LMS, or it have to be different?
No, for the LMS, it's your full email address and a different password. So I have to set you up with the LMS and send you the URL.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
But send me an email to remind me, please.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions while you have me? Okay, wonderful.
I don't think so. We want to thank you for an amazing training.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great night, and I'll see some of you tomorrow again.
You too. Good night.
Bye. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye. See you tomorrow.